Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive on something, kind of unexpected from a comedian like Basketmouth. We're going to be exploring his experience with a toxic relationship. You know him for his humor, his quick wit, but this time he's really letting us in on a side of himself that's just raw and vulnerable and honestly incredibly relatable.
It's fascinating, right? Like, it really challenges that idea that someone who makes a living out of laughter can't also be deeply affected by these kinds of situations. It reminds us that behind the public persona, everyone has their own internal struggles.
Exactly, and I think that's what makes this deep dive so compelling. He's not just telling a story, he's sharing a struggle, a process of realization, and ultimately a journey of finding the strength to break free. Now, have you ever felt stuck in a situation that just wasn't serving you anymore? Maybe a relationship or a job or even a friendship. This deep dive is really going to explore those feelings, and I think you'll find some powerful takeaways, even if your situation isn't exactly the same.
Right from the start, Basket Mouse kind of takes us through his gradual awareness of being in this toxic relationship. What I find particularly interesting is the way he talks about the initial justifications, the hope for improvement. It's almost like a defense mechanism we all kind of employ sometimes.
Yeah, it's like we're wired to try and make things work,
Hmm.
to see the best in people, even when the signs are telling a different story. He talks about this inner conflict between wanting to believe in the relationship and the growing awareness of the disrespect and manipulation. That push and pull, that internal struggle, it can be so draining.
Absolutely. And it's something that so many people who've experienced these kinds of toxic dynamics can relate to. It speaks to the insidious nature of these situations,
Right.
how they often chip away at your self-worth so gradually that you don't even realize it's happening.
He doesn't shy away from the difficulty of it all.
Yeah.
Walking away from something that's no longer serving you takes immense courage, especially when it means challenging those societal expectations. You know those unspoken rules about how long you're supposed to try or work things out?
There's often this pressure to stay to make it work, especially, if it's a long-term relationship. But what Basket Mouth highlights so beautifully is this liberating power of prioritizing personal well-being over external validation. He's essentially saying, your peace of mind is worth more than trying to salvage something that's broken.
That's such a powerful reframing, isn't it? He's not saying that leaving is easy. In fact, he's very honest about how difficult it was, the doubts, the second guessing, even the guilt. But ultimately, he arrives at this incredibly powerful realization. Peace is priceless.
And I think it's important to unpack that a bit. What does peace really mean in this context? It's not just the absence of conflict. It's a sense of inner calm, a feeling of alignment with your values, a state of being where you're not constantly on edge or compromising your own
It's
needs.
about reclaiming your power,
Hmm.
your sense of self. And sometimes that requires walking away from a situation that's actively diminishing your peace, even if it means going against what society expects of you.
And that's where I think Basket Mouth's message becomes incredibly potent. He challenges those deeply ingrained beliefs about sticking it out and shows us that true strength lies in knowing when to let go.
He literally says, leaving isn't failing, it's freeing. It's like he's giving everyone permission to break free from this idea that staying, no matter how difficult things are, is somehow more honorable than prioritizing your own well-being.
It's a shift in perspective.
Yeah.
It's a recognition that you deserve to be in a situation that brings you joy and supports your growth. And sometimes that means having the courage to walk away from something that's no longer serving that purpose.
He also emphasizes the importance of recognizing your self-worth.
Yeah.
And I think that's a crucial piece of the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
It's about understanding that you deserve to be treated with respect and kindness and love, regardless of your past or what anyone else might say.
Absolutely. And that self-worth shouldn't be contingent on, external validation or someone else's behavior. It's about valuing yourself inherently, recognizing your own strengths and worthiness regardless of the situation.
It's so true. It's about knowing deep down that you are enough just as you are. And when you start to internalize that belief, it changes everything. It changes how you see yourself, how you interact with others, and ultimately the choices you make in life.
Now let's delve a little deeper into those key takeaways that Basket Mouth highlights. Peace is priceless is one that really resonated with me. What do you think he means by that? Not just on a surface level, but in a truly impactful way.
I think he's getting at something really profound here. For me, it's about recognizing the cost of not having peace. It's about acknowledging those subtle ways in which a toxic situation can chip away at your sense of self, your mental and emotional well-being. We often talk about the big, obvious signs of toxicity. But what about that daily drain? The constant feeling of being on edge, the nagging doubts that eat away at your confidence. Those things have a cost too, don't they?
They absolutely do. It's like a slow leak in your energy reserves, a constant state of depletion. It can manifest in so many ways. Anxiety, sleeplessness, difficulty focusing, even physical health issues. We might not always connect those dots. But the impact is real. And the longer you stay in that state of depletion, the harder it becomes to recognize your own needs and set healthy boundaries.
It's almost like you become desensitized to the negativity, and it starts to feel normal. And that's dangerous because it normalizes behaviors and patterns that ultimately don't serve you.
Yeah.
Basketmouth is basically saying, hey, wake up. Your peace of mind is precious. Don't sacrifice it for something that's constantly causing you pain.
And that leads perfectly into his second point. Leaving isn't failing, it's freeing. It's such a powerful statement because it challenges this deeply ingrained societal belief that we must endure hardship, especially in relationships, as if walking away is a sign of weakness or defeat.
It's like we're conditioned to think that grit and perseverance means sticking it out no matter what. But what if that's actually harming us in the long run? What if staying in a situation that's toxic is actually preventing us from experiencing true joy and fulfillment?
And I think that's where the idea of freedom comes in. It's about recognizing that sometimes the most courageous and loving act is to choose yourself, to choose your own well-being over the pressure to conform to societal expectations.
He talks about the feeling of liberation that came with making that difficult decision. And it's contagious, isn't it? He describes it as this weight being lifted, this sense of possibility opening up like a whole new world of experiences and connections becoming available.
Exactly. And it's not about blaming the other person or dwelling on the negativity of the past. It's about recognizing that you have the power to choose a different path, to create a life that reflects your values and brings you joy.
Now, his third point, strength lies in knowing when to let go, hits home for me. It's something I've struggled with personally. It's hard to admit when something isn't working, even when it's clear as day.
It's a human tendency to hold on to try to fix things, especially if you've invested a lot of time and energy into something. Sometimes we get so caught up in the familiar, even if it's causing us pain, that we're afraid to face the uncertainty of starting over.
It's almost like we convince ourselves that if we just try a little harder, things will magically get better. But what if that's just delaying the inevitable? What if the real strength lies in recognizing when a situation has run its course and it's time to move on?
And that's where self-awareness becomes so crucial. It's about taking a step back and honestly assessing the situation. Are you holding on to something out of fear, obligation, or societal pressure? Or are you truly invested in a relationship that brings you joy and supports your growth?
That's such a powerful question to ask ourselves, isn't it? It's about recognizing the difference between temporary challenges, which is a natural part of life, and truly toxic dynamics that are actively eroding your well-being.
Sometimes it's hard to differentiate between those two. And that's where seeking external perspectives can be so valuable. Talking to a trusted friend, a therapist, or even listening to stories like Basketmouth can help you gain clarity and see your own situation with fresh eyes.
Because sometimes we're so close to the situation that we lose perspective. We get caught up in the details, the justifications, the what-ifs. But hearing someone else's story, especially someone we admire, can be like a jolt of recognition, a wake-up call that reminds us that we deserve better.
And I think that's where Basketmouth's message becomes so powerful. He's not just sharing his story, he's offering a roadmap for healing and empowerment. He's showing us that it's possible to walk away from a toxic situation, to reclaim our peace of mind, and to create a life that is truly aligned with our values.
He also touches on something that I think is incredibly important, especially in the context of toxic relationships. The idea that we're not defined by our experiences, but by how we choose to learn from them and grow.
That's a crucial distinction. It's about reframing our past experiences not as failures or sources of shame, but as opportunities for growth and self-discovery.
He literally says, that experience didn't define me, it refined me. It's like he's saying, yes, I went through a difficult time, but it didn't break me. It made me stronger, wiser, and more determined to create a life that truly reflects who I am.
It's about owning your narrative, acknowledging the pain, but also recognizing the strength and resilience that emerged from that experience.
And that resilience is so evident in the way he talks about his journey. He doesn't dwell on the negativity or blame anyone. Instead, he focuses on the lessons learned, the growth he experienced, and the freedom he found on the other side.
He even talks about how the experience helped him to understand and appreciate his own worth on a deeper level. It's like going through that difficult time gave him a clearer understanding of his boundaries, his needs, and what he truly deserves in a relationship.
And that brings us to something that I think is particularly noteworthy, especially considering his status as a public figure. He's incredibly open about seeking help, which is something that's still stigmatized in many cultures, particularly for men.
This is where his message becomes truly groundbreaking. By openly sharing his experience of seeking therapy, he challenges those traditional notions of masculinity that equate vulnerability with weakness. It's like he's saying, it's okay to not have it all figured out. It's okay to ask for support. In fact, it takes strength to admit you need help.
And his willingness to be vulnerable sends a powerful message to men, encouraging them to break free from those limiting beliefs and prioritize their mental well-being. He even talks about how seeking therapy helped him to understand the patterns in his own behavior, the ways in which he might have been contributing to the unhealthy dynamics in the relationship.
And that's such an important point. It's about taking ownership of your own role in the situation, not in a blaming way, but in a way that empowers you to make different choices in the future.
It's about recognizing that even in a toxic relationship, both parties play a role. And understanding your own patterns can be incredibly liberating because it gives you the power to change them. It's not about blaming yourself. It's about taking responsibility for your own well-being and creating healthier dynamics in all your relationships.
And it's not just about men. He also has a powerful message for women. He urges them to recognize their self-worth and demand better treatment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He talks about the importance of setting boundaries, of knowing what you deserve, and of refusing to settle for anything less. It's like he's saying, ladies, you are queens. Know your worth and don't let anyone treat you as anything less.
His message is about empowering women to step into their own power, to recognize their own strength and value, and to refuse to tolerate disrespect or mistreatment.
And I think that's a message that resonates deeply, regardless of gender. It's about recognizing that everyone deserves to be in a relationship that is based on mutual respect, kindness, and support. And sometimes that means having the courage to walk away from something that is no longer serving that purpose.
Yeah. He's advocating for a shift in societal norms, isn't he? He's encouraging both men and women to embrace vulnerability, prioritize their well-being, and create relationships that are truly nurturing and fulfilling.
So before we wrap up this deep dive, let's take a moment to reflect on what's resonated with you so far.
Yeah.
What are some key takeaways that stand out? What parts of Basketmouth's story feel particularly relevant to your own life? Wow, it's been really insightful unpacking all of this, hasn't it?
It really has.
It strikes me as how his story, well, deeply personal, manages to tap into something universal, like he's talking about heartbreak, but also about this courage to choose yourself, which I think resonates with everyone on some level.
Yeah, that's the power of vulnerability, isn't it? By opening up and sharing his struggles, he creates a space for others to connect, to realize they're not alone in these experiences. And that, I think, is incredibly powerful, especially in a world that often pressures us to present, this perfect, unbreakable facade.
Right, like we're all supposed to have life figured out, be sailing through relationships without a scratch. But Basketmouth's story reminds us that it's okay to stumble, to feel lost, to question your choices. It's the processing, the learning that ultimately leads to growth.
Absolutely. And that's what I find so inspiring about his message. He doesn't end on a note of despair or victimhood. Instead, he focuses on the strength and freedom he found on the other side of pain.
He even describes it so beautifully. He says, the other side of pain is freedom, and on the other side of freedom is joy. It's almost poetic.
Right.
It reminds us that even though going through tough times is inevitable, those experiences don't have to define us. They can refine us, shape us into stronger, more resilient versions of ourselves.
He really reframes the experience as a catalyst for personal transformation. He talks about how it forced him to confront his own patterns, to set boundaries he hadn't realized he needed, and ultimately to develop a deeper understanding of his own worth.
It's like that saying, sometimes you have to break down to break open. And that's what I admire about Basketmouth's approach. He doesn't shy away from the messiness of it all. He acknowledges the pain, the struggle, but he also highlights the incredible growth that emerged from that experience.
And that growth is evident in the way he uses his platform to encourage others. He doesn't just share his story. He actively advocates for vulnerability, especially among men, challenging those traditional notions that equate emotional expression with weakness.
Yeah, he talks about how seeking therapy was a game changer for him, how it helped him unravel those ingrained beliefs and develop healthier coping mechanisms. And in a world where men are often told to toughen up and suppress their emotions, That's a radical act of self-love and a powerful message for others.
And it's not just about men, right? He also encourages women to recognize their own worth and demand better treatment. He emphasizes the importance of setting boundaries, refusing to settle for less than you deserve, and knowing that walking away from a situation that diminishes you is not a sign of weakness, but of strength.
It's a call to action for all of us, regardless of gender, to examine our own beliefs about relationships, to challenge societal norms that perpetuate unhealthy dynamics, and to create a world where vulnerability is seen as a strength, not a weakness.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's bring it back to you, the listener. What resonated with you most from Basketmouth's story? What are you taking away from this conversation?
And more importantly, what small step can you take today to move towards a healthier, more fulfilling situation in your own life? Maybe it's having an honest conversation with yourself about your needs, setting a boundary in a relationship that's been draining you, or simply reaching out for support.
Remember, you are worthy of love, respect, and happiness. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to prioritize your own well-being, even if it means making difficult choices.
Basketmouth's story reminds us that it's possible to find joy and freedom on the other side of pain. It's a reminder that we have the power to choose our path, to break free from limiting beliefs, and to create a life that truly reflects who we are.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this conversation has sparked some new insights and inspired you to prioritize your own well-being. Remember, you're not alone in this journey.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep striving to create a life that truly brings you joy.